Hiya Tom, great to catch up with you again yesterday up on the range. Super session, some good progress towards the end. Just a quick recap on the suggestions that we made. First of all, did we look at you down the line with your takeaway? Club still getting a touch behind your hands at that point. What we'd rather see is the club being a little bit more in line with the hands at the same point. So we can see here now we're looking directly down the shaft of the club as opposed to having the club shaft rolled to the inside. As we then move up to the top of the golf swing, at that point not a great deal of wrist set for such a short club, more of a full setting of the wrists halfway back. Then as we approach the top, the shaft of the club is short of parallel but still across the line. If that club was more parallel, it would be considerably across the line, rather than the club being more in line with the hands. So we would have, if we had driver comparing like for like, we would now be over in this position. The problem then occurs that the plane of the swing has been shifted to the right from that position at the top. The wrists uncock a little bit too early, and now the player is stuck under plane. Shoulders a little bit shut off, shaft club head too much behind the hands. That in turn moves the low point back and makes it very hard to make solid contact, particularly with longer clubs. As we come through now, we're going to see this player down lagging a little bit more, allowing the club to get a little bit more out in front of him and coming into impact. The shaft is now slightly less behind his hands than with yourself. Now again, if we're comparing like for like, we do need the club to be slightly behind the hands with the driver. That's something we can go into in subsequent sessions, but we definitely need with yourself the club more in that position coming into the golf ball. So then we took a look at why that's happening, and what we talked about was the initial move away from the golf ball. Certain things are happening with the forearms and the wrists. So we take a little look at yours. You've got the rolling of the left forearm and you've got the cocking of the wrist. Now you roll the left forearm nicely because you can see there that the club and everything gets rolled behind you, so that forearm rotates. No problem at all with the forearm rotating. But what needs to happen is, as the forearm is rotating, and we'll just take ground weight back to his setup position, as the forearm is rotating, the wrists are also cocking to offset that and stop the club creeping behind. So we're looking in from face on. As the forearms rotate, the wrists are gradually cocking. So if we took a sort of angle here between club and arms and compare that to where we are at setup, there's been a gradual cocking of the wrists on the way back. So the forearms are rotating and the wrists are cocking to offset one another, allowing the player to arrive at the top in a much better position. So the club or the wrists are hinging from approximately 132 degrees with his driver to around about 90 degrees when he reaches chest height. So the wrists should cock incrementally as the arms swing back until they arrive at a fully cocked position, 90 degrees at the top of the backswing. Then something else we discussed was that once the wrists are fully cocked to 90 degrees at the top of the backswing, during the early part of the downswing, that wrist angle should increase further before then gradually releasing through impact. So the wrists are incrementally increasing the amount of cock they have in them from setup to the early part of the downswing. It's only from here now that the wrists start to uncock, bringing the club into impact on the correct plane. So we take a little look at you towards the end of your session, Tom. After doing a little bit of work with the ball forward in the grid, and also a little bit of work on setting the wrists a little bit differently during your swing. See, this one's it. So we've got a shorter backswing. Shorter backswing at this stage is going to encourage more setting of the wrists. And as you start to set the wrists earlier, what we're trying to do here is hit the ball further with a shorter swing. You can see there that the club stays in front of your hands a little bit more. So the cocking of the wrists offsets the rotation of the forearms. Look a little bit further down. See if this one's it. Bear with me. No. Sorry about this, Tom. I know we've got some footage on you here somewhere. Here we go. Okay, so we've got the ball forward in the grid. We're trying to hinge the wrists a little bit quicker on the way back. Now this is a 3-iron, so we'd expect if we're struggling with this, we'd expect to see it standing out more with a longer club. Club more in front of your hands. Here. As a result of that, the club is in a much more online position at the top. And gets more out in front of us coming down. So you're going to use the grid and the ball forward in the grid as a tool to encourage certain things in your golf swing. With the ball forward, there has to be a shift to the left. We can see there that we don't get stuck underneath it quite as much. That in turn will move the low point out in front of the golf ball on a more consistent basis. What we're also looking to do is from here to here increase the amount of load that we have on the shaft. I'm just going to get Grant White up on the full screen here for you and really look at that movement from the top. So as he starts down, there's an increase in the amount of hinge in the wrist. So that's accumulator number 2. Increase the amount of hinge in the wrist as we're coming down. That in turn is going to help you control the low point and the radius of your swing much more consistently, particularly with your longer clubs. Good luck with it. If there's any questions, feel free to pop in and have a chat. I look forward to working with you again in the coming months. Well done.